Hey guys, thought I'd do a quick video while I'm out here in nature about creation myths. It's often said that the creation myth in Genesis is a critique of the Mesopotamian creation myths at the time, where the creator God is basically a being within the universe who, through usually a combat, a battle with a sea monster, would create the world. So you have a sea monster that stands for chaos, being defeated by the god who then creates order out of that chaos. So it's you have the element of the combat myth, and you have the element of the god creating out of pre-existing matter. And Genesis myth is then supposed to be something that contrasts with that, because it's a god who pre-exists everything and then creates it through a speech act. And it's often said that that coincides with the creation and the use of script, of writing. I mean, that as writing became more developed and more widespread, that idea of a god writing or speaking things into existence through his words became more popular. But if you look at, and the claim is that this Genesis story is quite unique in that sense, but I was reading through old Egyptian creation myths. This is from, I have the book here with me, this is from the Ancient Near East, an anthology of texts and pictures, which I can highly recommend. And in the very first chapter they have a text which is a Memphite creation myth. So from the city of Memphis, in the first dynasty, the first Egyptian dynasty, Memphis became the prominent city, the capital. And you see this move where they try to promote the god of that city, and give him a pre-existence to all other gods in Egypt. And he does this, or they do this, by also making him a creator in this kind of intellectual sense of speaking the world into existence, and the other gods as well. In Egypt they would call these other gods gods. In the Jewish faith they would have called them angels, like lower divine beings, but created nonetheless, like the other gods in this particular story. Just read you a part of it just to give you an idea. There came into being as the heart, by which they mean the brain, and there came into being as the tongue, something in the form of Atum. The mighty great one is Ptah, who transmitted life to all gods as well as to their cars, through this heart by which Horus became Ptah, and through this tongue by which Thoth became Ptah. So the Memphite god is Ptah, and he, through his thoughts and speech, so kind of like Yahweh in Genesis, through a speech act, creates Atum, which kind of corresponds to the idea of Sophia, which you'll find in Proverbs. So wisdom as a kind of a divine attribute, which is then personified, turned into an actual divine person who co-creates. So in this text it's Atum that is created by Ptah, and then Atum, like Sophia, co-creates the rest of the world, including the other gods. And just to give you some further clarification. Thus, all the gods were formed, and is Ennead, by which they mean pantheon. So, like in the Greek pantheon of gods, you have the Egyptian Ennead, assembly of gods. Thus, all the gods were formed, and his Ennead was completed, the Ennead of Ptah. Indeed, all the divine order really came into being through what the heart thought and the tongue commanded. So here you have an Egyptian myth. I mean, the text itself goes back to, the document goes back to 700 BC, but the translator says that all the evidence shows that this goes back at least 2,000 years before. So you have a much older creation myth than the Genesis creation myth, where they also have this creation through a speech act instead of defeating a sea monster. And you still find traces of the older version of the Genesis story in Genesis itself, and other parts of the Old Testament, where they refer to the primordial waters, so that the chaos, and then refer to the Leviathan, so the sea monster. So in older versions of the Genesis story, the God defeated the sea monster and then created the world as we know it today out of that. So out of chaos created, out of chaos created order. The order they thought that we see here today. Right. Just to give you a nice view of where I'm having my little walk. Right, hope you enjoyed that.